Alright, so in the previous lesson, you learned how to convert from percent to decimal and from decimal to percent. But those were somewhat simple percentage, and those were somewhat easy problems. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about how to convert from percent to fraction, and given any percent and not just some percent. Alright? So again, just so that you have this understanding, every time you hear the word percent, it means per 100. So every time you hear the word percent, think of a fraction with the denominator of 100. So again, if you hear 1%, it's 1 over 100 per 100. 53%, 53 over 100. 8%, 8 over 100. Percent is always out of 100. 110%, 110 over 100. It is always out of 100. All right. So let's go ahead and write percent as a fraction first, in either mixed number or simplest form. All right. So first, let's do first example, number 1, 40%. Turn that into a fraction or a mixed number, and I want you to write it in simplest form. So I hear percent, I know it's 40 out of 100 because that's what percent means. Percent means it's a fraction, but it just has 100 as a denominator. So now I know that both of these numbers are divisible by 10 because they both end in zeros. So I will divide them by 10. And so that will give me 4, and that will give me 10. All right, and then I know that 4 and 10 has 2 in common, and they're both divisible by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 40% is 2/5 as a fraction in simplest form. 1.9%. Write that as a fraction. So 1.9 over 100. Right? It is always over 100. Remember, percent means per 100. And now we need to reduce this percentage. When we write it as a fraction, numerator and denominator should be whole number. So what I need to do is I need to shift the decimal one place to the right, because currently it's 1.9 and that's not a whole number. But if I shift it one place to the right, it becomes 19. And if I shift that one place to the right, then I also need to shift the 100 one place to the right, which becomes 1,000. And that's the best that we can do for that problem. They're not divisible by 2, they're not divisible by 3, they're not divisible by 5, and therefore we're good. So those are some of the simple divisibility tests. 125%, 125 over 100. Remember that we're trying to write a percent as a fraction in simplest form. So we wrote, every time I see percent, I know it's always over 100. 125 and 100 are both divisible by 5. So I divide the top and bottom by 5. This brings me to 5 goes into 12 2 times, and 5 goes into 25 5 times. So 25, and then 100 divided by 5 gives me 20. I know that they both end in a 5 and a 0, so they're divisible by 5 again. So divide those by 5. 25 goes into 5 5 times. 20 goes into 5 4 times. So, or 5 goes into 24 times. So now you have 5 over 4, which can be turned into a mixed number. So I'm going to take 5 and divide that by 4. 5 divided by 4 gives me 1, and it has a remainder of 1, and it will be over the same denominator. All right, so percent to a fraction. Keep in mind that percent means per 100, and then we just have to reduce the fraction. All right, we're going to go backward now. We're going to go from fraction into percent, and we're going to round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. The first problem hopefully should be easy, because if you see per 100, if you see any fraction with 100, it means that the top number is the percent, because percent means per 100. All right, here's your first challenge. How do I turn 1/8 into a percent? Because it is not a fraction with 100 as the denominator. So in this case, you have to divide. Step 1, divide. So if I divide, I'm going to get 8 goes on the outside, 1.000. Add as many zeros as I need. Bring up the decimal. 8 goes into 0. 8 go into 1 0 times. 0 times 8 is 0. Bring down the 0. 8 goes into 10 one time. 1 times 8 is 8. Subtract, I get 2. Bring down the 0. 8 goes into 22 times. 2 times 8 is 16. Bring down the next 0. 8 goes into 45 times. So I get 0.125 as my my decimal. And then step 2, to go from a decimal to percent, move decimal point two places to the right. So it was 0.125. Moving the decimal 2 places to the right becomes 12.5. Now remember, we're able to do this because from the last lesson, this was a shortcut to move from decimal into percent. All right, and I know that you might need to review the first lesson to comprehend that. All right. 1/12. So if your fraction does not have 100 as the denominator, then you have no choice but to divide. So I'm going to divide 1 by 12. Bring the decimal up. 12 goes into 1 0 times. 0 times 12 is 0. Subtract. I have a remainder of 1. Bring down the 0. 12 goes into 10. 0 times 12 is 0. Subtract. I have a remainder of 10. Bring down the next 0. 12 goes into 100. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 1 is 8. With the remainder of 1 is 9. I have a remainder of 4. Bring down my next 0. 12 goes into 43 times. 3 times 12, 36. Subtract. I have a remainder of 4. Bring down the next 0. So I realize that there's a pattern. It's going to be 83333 because it keeps having a remainder of 4. Now here's where I round if necessary. So I'm going to round to the nearest hundredth. So 10 hundredths. The eighth is the hundredth location, and because that number is less than 5, this number actually equals to 0.08. So that's my first step. I divide. Step 2, I'm going to move the decimal 2 places to the right. So moving the decimal 2 places to the right makes it 8%. All right. Now going to example 7. Example 7 contains 2 parts, 1 and 1/12. Turn a mixed number into a percent. In example 6, we found out that that is 8%. All right. And the number 1, the whole number will represent like 100%. So if you see a whole number, think of that as 100%. So together, 100% plus 8%, a mixed number and a fraction means you add those, becomes 108%. All right, and I will go over problems similar to example 7 the next time I see you.